Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this 2024-2025 budget. Mr. President, if I may, I too wish to acknowledge the presence of the students and teacher from the Vishnu Boys Hindu School. Welcome to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. President, steadfast and resolute, forging pathways to prosperity was read in the other place. And this morning, quite frankly, I had an opening of beautiful economics analysis, but the speaker who preceded me reminded us that painfully the PNM has been in office for 10 years. We really did not need that reminder. I think that was a cruel joke. Past 10 years. Only this morning, it's all over the newspapers. It has been reported that the General Secretary, and Mr. President, this is not a cockroach and fall business or falling cockroach business. This is our business, because the people who are talking are the members of the PNM, who are members of the government. So this is our business, because the members of the government, we have to say, is our government, unfortunately, but they are. So what was being reported is that the General Secretary is asking his Prime Minister, or telling his Prime Minister, because now here you don't ask him, he just tell him. He's saying, there can be no uncertainty with who is the leader. So I asked him this morning, who is our leader? We know who is our leader, because we know. You could say what you want about her. We know because she tells us to put God in front and walk behind. That's what she tells us. And she tells us to serve the people, serve the people, serve the people. That's what we get from our leader. So there's no ambiguity there. There's no uncertainty there, Mr. President. Mr. President, so this is a very critical question requiring urgent answers, because the last time I checked, Trinidad and Tobago is a democracy. And you can't hand over the office of the Prime Minister as if you're the Queen. It's a democracy, all right? So this is cockroach no foul business, or vice versa. This is Trinidad, the people of Trinidad and Tobago asking a question, who is our leader this morning? Because the paper is saying that what, they bust up, they tear up. And these are the people who caused, these are the people who jeered at the UNC, you know, caused some people to walk over and throw themselves over a political cliff, you know, taking basket. Taking basket, right? You can say what you want to know. UNC is a democratic institution. And we know democracy is messy, right? But when it is time to call our internal elections, we call it without fear or favor. We call our internal election. And let the chips fall where they may. You understand? Let the chips fall where they may. You understand? We are not there hiding and bobbing and weaving. afraid of the people. They have collapsed in our face. They're afraid to face their own people. Don't talk about UNC business. Yeah. We are totally unafraid of anything. Right? We are totally unafraid. We call our elections when they are due, even before they are due. So keep all your mouth out of our business. We are here preparing for government. We will not be distracted, Mr. President. So this is a party that allowed the politics of spite, malevolence, easy answers, distraction, and malicious bullying. And now they're calling bullying sotovose. Crosstalk, you know. That has become their comfort zone after 10 years in government. Rather than face the responsibility and reality of government, politics reduced to an expensive, divisive, noisy performance, a game to be played, not as a force that can fundamentally change the lives of those we represent, but they have taken it now into a whole other space. And looking at this budget of 2024 to 25, the bill for this performance that they have put on, this bullying, is now in. And I'm afraid if we don't take action, if the UNC does not take action, it is a check that will bounce. And we cannot have this. This country is too precious. I mean, they have left nothing, of course, after 10 years. Just yesterday, I am here in this parliament, Mr. President. And what is coming up on my phone? Murders. Murders after murder, not one a day or two a day, is by the hours. I'm hearing right now, I think they killed 2 police officers yesterday, and one is in the hospital with 2 bullets in their head. Yesterday, Mr. President. Homicide 524. That was yesterday. Homicide 527, and that was at what? 3:30 no, just now. They have the time, 1:05 p.m. Homicide 526, 1:10 p.m. Homicide 527, 1:16 p.m. Homicide 528, 1:16 p.m. Homicide 529, 1:17 p.m. Homicide 530, 1:18 p.m. I got those by 3:30 yesterday. Shame. I don't know, and I mean, the day still had about 9 hours to go. That is what happens 10 years after the government has been in office. Mr. President, elections have consequences, and I cannot see any government tolerating 4,600 murders since coming into office, except one who callously embraced a policy of who dead, dead. Because although every citizen affected by crime, under the watch of this government, it has been allowed to run unchecked, rampant, murderously, particularly in poor and vulnerable underserved communities. So, Mr. President, that explains totally why this government has tolerated a murder rate of 530 now. I think they're saying again in the papers, they're trying to keep out a certain person. They said there's in the newspaper, I know I can't hold it up, Mr. President, but it was in the Express today. There's a level of dissonance and anger because people are resistant to this ready-made successor. And they're saying, ready-made successor. You understand? The PNM behaving as if it's a KFC 2-piece and fries. You understand? Ready-made. You understand what I'm saying? They're resisting that. That's coming out, After 10 years, they're now talking. You know why? Because it's affecting them. All the time, they're happy. You understand? They're playing Trump and follow suit. You understand? They say, I think it is because he's seen as part of a very elitist group that does not resonate with the rank and file of the PNM, except when it's seated. Mr. President, mouth open and Tory jump out. All the time. All the time. They had nothing to say. As our dear colleague, Senator Jearlean will say, they're there with their mouth pursue. But today, every one of them, they are talking out. They're climbing over each other, fighting each other to get into the media, to put their business out in the road. Mr. President, the biggest problem facing us as a nation today, amongst all of the problems the PNM government has visited upon us, is crime. Every road leads back to a government who enables, a government who creates a facilitatory environment to ensure crime and criminality is the biggest, most viable activity in Trinidad and Tobago today. Mr. President, crime is everything, everywhere, all of the time. And if there is no justice and no security, there can be no peace. It doesn't matter how big the budget, how impressive the budget, right? So our children, Mr. President, there is no security for our people after having spent $26 billion over the 10 years. When we talk in this story, we must tell the full story, You understand? We have to say what has happened. Over 10 years, our children are being murdered. $26 billion did not save their lives. $26 billion. Children doing the things that children do. Little Ezekiel, 11 years, riding his bike in Maplands, going to the parlor. That's a joy for any 11-year-old. He was murdered. 9-year-old Jomo playing in a savannah. That is what a child does. He was murdered. What did the Minister of National Security say? He was in the wrong place at the wrong time because he's in a savannah playing. Understand? There is a little girl, little Amara. The mother was in danger and she was calling the child. The child felt they were playing hide and seek, doing the things that children do. But it wasn't hide and seek. There was danger. A murderer caught this little child. And Kochang too. This 10 years of PNM governments, right? They killed my children for nothing. That is what Anissa Mohammed said. Of 5 children, 4 gunned down in one night. They said nothing then. They said nothing. They're talking now because elitists come up like a 2-piece and fries. They're now talking. Everybody talking. You understand? Because a package deal. Yes. They said take it or leave it. It's the same thing they used to tell us out here. Yes. All right? Yes. Anika Guerra. She got 5 bullets. She was 5 years. 5 years. 5 bullets. You know what she was? Sitting in her mother's lap, plaiting her hair. 5 years old. They gave her 5 bullets. He's only under the PNM 10 years in office. Too long. that a mother's arm could become a crime scene. The place should be the safest place on earth. I love when my mother plait my hair. The safest place on earth has become a crime scene under the PNM after 10 years. That is all the legacy after 10 years. Don't come here and give me no talks about 10 years. And you could go on and all. Whether it is Crystal from Scotiabank who was excited to go into a house the next month for Christmas, she will never go into the house. 3 men roll up in front of her children who she had loved, ages 6 and 9. Beat her in front of them, and then they told the children, go outside. To do what? To kill the mother. To kill that woman who they said had loved her children so much, did everything for them. Who now will love those children? Pensioner Hyacinth Danclair from Arima. The woman had an eye surgery. She was found the next morning dead. They said besides the murder, she might have been sexually assaulted prior to. And on and on and on and on. Mr. President, whether it is people who are already murdered and buried in the grave, like happened with a fellow they call, I think, Shrek, Kevin Lucas. Shrek. Imagine he dead, buried. They went and dig up the grave and burn him. That is 10 years of PNM. That is what is happening. These things are bizarre. These things are macabre. These things are crazy. This is a government that has collapsed. Yeah. And we have been telling them that all along. But now they themselves are admitting that they collapse. So, Mr. President, this budget is no blueprint to be steadfast and resolute, forging pathways to prosperity. In the 10 years, the only prosperity the PNM has forged is for funeral homes. And by their recklessness, failed policies, non-action, cruelty, and indifference, they have placed every citizen on the fast track to Appropriation Cemetery. That's what they have done. That's the legacy. So the 2024-25 budget statement has been described by Dr. Winfred James in his Trinidad Guardian published articles and Dr. Vanus James's in his notes on the budget as budgeting for failure. Mr. President, in fact, the only people listening to the PNM budget is us inside here. Out there in the street, no one wants to hear anything they have to say because it matters not what they say. The ordinary people does not benefit. They see no improvement in their lives. They still cannot purchase food or school books. They cannot save towards a home for themselves and their children and their families. After spending $26 billion, citizens do not feel safe because we are not safe. All they see is a government hell-bent on fulfilling their purpose, their mission, their raison d'etre, their policy direction to make the rich richer. And then they have the temerity to come here and ask about how would Kamla Prasad Bissessa, the Honorable, fulfill her promises that she made in the budget.
Senator, yes, did you give the date of the article? The date, did you give the date?
Which article?
The news article you just read out.
No, I didn't read out an article. Oh, it wasn't an article.
Okay.
No, I just referred to it. It was an article, Mr. President. I know they want it to be an article, but it's not an article. It's not an article. So, Kamla Prasad Bissessa, unfortunately, did not have 5 years. Not her 10 years. She had 5 years. Right? When Kamla Prasad Bissessa, the Honorable, was in office, you didn't hear anything about high food prices. Yes. The murder rate wasn't as high as it is for sure. Mothers were not afraid. They had a baby grant. They might say, why give a baby grant? Because that might be the difference between a child being nourished and a child being malnourished. Yes. You understand? They stood here or somewhere and they spoke about the laptop program in the most disparaging terms. But that's because you can afford it. You see? The elitism. Today they're running from elitism. Correct. You understand? But that is who they are. They're running today, but that is who they are. You understand what I'm saying? That is just who they are. They're running from it. They're running from their description. You understand? But that is just who they are. Right? Because it's only elitists will say a laptop is too much for a child. Who else will say that? Eh? Who else will say a baby grant is too much for a child? What else Kamla Prasad Bissessa did? You know, there were so many of these programs. Early Childhood Center. What it meant is that some young lady who might have made a baby young and really see no hope, they could go back to school knowing that their child is placed in an environment that is safe, that is affordable. They could drop them and pick them up. Only an elitist could be against that. Yeah, who could be against that? So, Mr. President, after $26 billion in security, we are not safe. Mr. President, on page 9 of the budget statement, according to the Minister of Finance, in 2023, our economy grew by 1.3%, following growth of 1.5% in 2022. In 2024, real GDP growth increased to 1.9%. This is now 3 consecutive years of real growth, which signifies a renewal of economic activity, a rebound in confidence, and a promising trajectory towards a positive economic environment. The minister cited, Mr. President, no other growth target in the budget statement, so 1.9% must be his best expectations from the planned spending program. But one must ask, growth leading to what outcome? Because the minister did not talk about, they have a way they present a budget without context, without saying, okay, these are the things that we had offered last year, this is what we have achieved, this is where we're going, and of course, the big objective is Vision 2030, or so they told us. But there is nothing in this budget to say how whatever, whether it's a growth pattern, whether it's the cost of borrowing, how that relates to where we are or where we are going, and if we're going to meet Vision 2020. I know they are not going to be there with us, but at least, if it's a good plan, it's a good plan, right? But we know that is not a good plan because it comes from a 10-year-old PNM in government. Another compelling reason to be concerned is found in the data provided on the national cost of borrowing. On page 17 of the budget statement, the minister gave us an indication that the government borrowing cost is about 6.4%, at least on a 10-year US $750 million bond. When compared, Mr. President, to the growth expectation of 1.9%, which typically aligns well with the generate rate of profit on capital in the real economy, this signals that investors in the government paper will fare significantly better than investors in the real economy. And that is why they always say when they put out these government bond offering, it's oversubscribed. The minister come and he beats his chest. But as business people, it makes sense. Why are you going to invest in something that will not give you the highest yield? That is why there's an oversubscription in these bond offerings, as that happened in 2018 and especially in 2023, which is listed on page 40 of the budget statement. Mr. President, however, this reveals a huge problem of debt unsustainability attending the budgeting practices. In fact, to avoid a mounting debt stock, the budget should be calibrated against the capital expenditure plan to achieve a growth rate in excess of the borrowing rate of 6.4%. Mr. President, that kind of growth calculation is not to be found anywhere in this budget, in particular in terms of the growth targeted by the PSIP, the government's capital spending program. Neither is it in line with their Vision 2030 objective. Instead, what is evident is that the country has been asked to gamble, to roll the dice, to wish upon a star, even, and hold straight that the cross-border gas fields with Venezuela will come on stream and deliver an impressive, massive, positive shock that rescues us at some time after holding strain of 2027. That and God face alliance. Right? Nobody holding strain until 2027. Right? Trinidad and Tobago done with this government, and as Kamala Harris saying in America, and they're not going back. They're not going back. So, Mr. President, if you want additional evidence that the government is betting the house on prospective energy, look at the plan at the bottom of page 14 of the published budget statement. In 2025, to further bolster our reserves, we plan to introduce legislation to encourage energy sector companies to remit all their taxes to the government in US dollars. The minister said yesterday he realized quite late in the game that only, I think, that 50% of the energy sector taxes are paid in US dollars, although 100% of the oil and processed gas and petrochemicals are exported. Now, in the same budget statement, the Minister of Finance says that he expects the non-energy sector to play an increasing role in generating export. So then why not set the same rule for that sector? Surely one should ask, how much US dollars does the non-energy sector generate, and what share of the non-energy sector taxes is remitted to the government in US dollars? Right? Because we should not forget that back in the days when sugar was our main export and we relied on it to deliver the 100% of our foreign exchange, it did not cover the country's import bills. So the matter is not trivial, Mr. President, yet the minister is silent on that matter, likely a testament that his faith really lies in the energy sector, after all, at least when it comes to generation of foreign exchange. This in a context in which the import cover fell by about 12% from 8.6 months in 2022 to 7.7 months, let me read that again. This in a context in which the import cover fell by about 12% from 8.6 months in 2022 to 7.7 months in 2023. As I said before, Mr. President, this matter is not at all trivial, and that is indeed the case. I hope the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy alignment of perspective include focus on the energy sector, because recent events have verified that they have more than Georgia on their minds. You get that?
Yes, of course.
You're late. Why is he so late? You tend to... No, he only know young brother. He only know young brother. Yes, right? Performance of the energy sector, of the non-energy sector. Mr. President, the Ministry of Finance approach to analysis of the he's elite. That's the point. He wouldn't know George on your line. He must only know Tchaikovsky. Yeah. Performance of the non-energy sector. Mr. President, the Ministry of Finance approach to analysis of the non-energy sector is also a recipe for developmental failure. In the budget statement, the manufacturing sector is represented as the main driver of the non-energy sector, and specifically as contributing 22% of the total exports in fiscal 2023, down from 26% in 2020. Mr. President, there is no explanation for the significant decline in contribution. Most interesting, there is no mention of productivity growth in the sector. No cogent explanation can be offered because the sector is understood as a hodgepodge of activities. Here is how the minister represented growth of exports amongst the subsector of manufacturing. Several manufacturing subsectors experienced significant gains in export over the fiscal 2020 to 2023 period, including food and beverages 40%, paper and paper-related products 47%, plastic and rubber products 66%, basic chemicals and fertilizer 46%, glass and glass products 161%, furniture and light fittings 34%, clothing, textiles and apparel 63%, and wood-related products 46%. Mr. President, nothing can be learned from this hodgepodge approach. Mr. President, the government's inadequate approach to economic restructuring plus a growth rate well below the cost of borrowing provides a basis for understanding the prospects and implication of rising deficit spending over time, illustrated by an increase from 1.7% in 2023 to 3.5% in 2024. The reason given for the expected increase in the deficit ratio is an expected shortfall in the energy sector revenue caused by low oil and gas prices and declining production. So, Mr. President, since the non-energy sector is a highly import-dependent sector, and since the sector is not transforming towards capital production, then the growth of its exports, as documented by the minister, will create a rising demand for import that is not matched by its growth of foreign exchange earnings and import displacement. Combined with a fall in energy exports, the result will surely be a fall in import cover. This is a government who, without cogent explanation, closed down our main foreign exchange earner, Petrotrin. And now that the minister has told us in this parliament, companies in the energy sector only make 50% of their forex available to the government. Petrotrin, as a then net earner of forex, as it was, and state-owned company would have made available 100% of their forex. So closing down Petrotrin was professional malpractice at best, and really we don't want our imagination to run wild as to what is the real reason. So this observation, Mr. President, reinforces the snake oil properties of the development strategy evident in the budgeting for 2025 by the Minister of Finance. Yet, the Minister of Trade in the other place claims that the private sector always does better under the PNM. Just as Senator Leiter before me, I posed the question, which private sector? This is not unlike the question posed in the Express editorial of 16th October 2024. The title, The Vulgarity of Stuart Young, quote, he meaning Minister Young, that is a quote, then goes on to humble brag. I hope and trust that my record of service to...
Mr. President, I hate to disturb my honorable friend. References to members of the House, whether it be the opposition leader or the member for Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West, should be just that, or by their ministerial portfolio.
Okay, yes. The Minister of Tourism is indeed correct. If you're referencing a member of the other house, it's by their constituency, or if they are a minister, by the ministerial title. Continue, Senator John.
No, just sorry, Mr. Honorable President, I was quoting the Express editorial. It said 16th October 2024. It said the vulgarity of Stuart Young, but if he want me to say the PNM Prime Minister.
Yes.
All right. Have a seat. Yes, if you're quoting and you're going to use the name, you could also come after and indicate the title, which should correct the situation. Continue, Senator John.
But I wouldn't go over it again because it seems as if they're unhappy when I put his title. So they're unhappy when I put his real title. So, right? So then goes on to humble brag. I hope and trust that my record of service to our country speaks for itself. And the Express went on to say, what exactly is that service? What exactly is that record? Well, Mr. Young, the Prime Minister, the acting Prime Minister, right? End quote. I asked the government, what exactly is your record? And which private sector says they fare better under PNM government? Is it the TNT private sector who is out there barely holding on after all that they went through during COVID? The ones that you all will not give their VAT refund, a government who cynically withholds their VAT refund, which in many cases are a financial lifeline for their businesses. I ask again, which private sector? The one who suffers as the government brazenly doles out scarce forex to their friends and financiers, whilst alternatively giving people who are less blessed and favored they have to line up for $100 at a time from the bank. Then those people on the black market now have to, some of them purchase forex was at $7.5 or $8. They could never compete with those who are getting it at the bank with the government, keeping the doors open to give. So which private sector, who told you they are doing so well? I noticed the minister did not comment on the cost of extortion, home invasions, and even murder on the business sector. Because, Mr. President, there is a cost. The extortion, racket, and home invasions are causing an erosion of the SME sector, accompanied by difficulties to obtain forex from the bank. But the Minister of Finance doesn't appear to know these things. Maybe the Minister of Trade, Honorable Minister of Trade, should advise him. 5 months ago, National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines responded to a question from the UNC in the other place, acknowledged that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has noticed an increase of reports of criminal elements demanding money by menace from the business community. But this was already old news to businessmen and the country as a whole. Then President of the Shogunas Chamber of Commerce, Baldat Maharaj, had said then that the business community is under siege. This is evidenced by the plight of businessman used car dealer Sachal Konji-Bihari. And he sadly is just one of many. He's now a statistic. Mr. President, Sachal Konji-Bihari was from Konupia. That probably is the reason he has not been mentioned. Perhaps his plight does not matter to the government. His life probably does not matter. After all, he's from Konupia. He was probably not highfalutin enough, not elite enough. Because, during the budget debate in the other place, all this happened, and they found, they asked for $500,000, $500,000. And even after it was paid, they killed him. They killed him after it was paid. The mother in her pain say, I wish the Commissioner of Police could feel my pain. But I wish the whole of the PNM could feel her pain. Yeah, man. I wish they could feel her pain. Because right now, they have another one in there, I think, some Suvesh Ramnarayan. They're now asking for $3 million. We have not heard about him as yet. And there's a video circulating where they just walk into the man's yard and pick him up like a DHL package, and go on with him. Under this government, this is what is happening. Then yesterday, the president of, it was reported, the president of Penal Debe Chamber of Commerce, Ramprasad Suraj, he was home sleeping. They killed his dog, went into his house and chopped up the man. Poisoned his dog. That is what is happening. You understand? So we don't know. This is what the government should be paying attention to. Over and over, everywhere. Mr. President, this is not Gaza. These terrifying events are now not only everyday occurrences, they are hourly occurrences, just as I mentioned earlier. So who commending, which private sector commending the government on this? Did they ask for this? I want to ask, did the private sector ask for this? Right, the Express editorial, the day following the reading of the budget, they said throwing more good money behind bad. I quote, the Express then, evaluating the yawn. They said that, some 5-hour-plus budget presentation by Finance Minister Colomimbe, the Honorable Minister Colomimbe, by Trinidad and Tobago #1 problem crime. There is little for the government to crow about, and even less to inspire public optimism that the wanton, white-collar, and violent crime will be stalled. Occupying the national stage for what is likely his final theoretical moment, Mr. Imbe spoke persuasively about the impact of crime on individuals, families, and communities, but was far less convincing on solution. Mr. President, as I said before, crime is everything, everywhere, all at once in this country. Mr. President, kidnapping for ransom and missing people is up. Mr. President, the extortion business is growing. Mr. President, criminal gangs and murder for hire is booming. So, Mr. President, the government's budgetary provision to address the scourge of rising crime is perhaps the best example of how to budget for failure. Here is how the minister admitted to the failure of his crime reduction policy after 2 consecutive terms in office, 10 years. One area of greatest in transition, difficulty which remains and continues to resist our best effort, is violent behavior, crime and criminality, largely highlighted by violent murder involving the use of illegal firearms. Approximately 4,600 murders, that was end quote, since 2015, and for the year, over 530. But this government of shortcuts, only interest is in locking up a man named Christmas List who could come here. And in a week or 2, he found every gang. Could have documented it for international consumption, you know. Yet our state cannot find these gangs, even as we are told that the gang-related crimes account for 55% of our suffering. And we who live here cannot find one gang, but of course, Mr. Christmas List is the issue. And now if they're locking up Christmas List, I feel children have to be careful because Christmas is almost next month. They're going to look up Santa Claus because they're always trying to find a distraction. That's what they do, is a government of distraction. They have no policy, no program, no solution. So, Mr. President, over the last 10 years, the police have extracted 7,683 illegal guns and 153,510 rounds of illegal ammunition from the criminal element. Notwithstanding this, 3,986 persons have been killed over the same period with the use of firearms. So that's our biggest problem. Yet, of course, we talk ad nauseum about the borders being open. You understand? And they thump their desks when they say they're in office for 10 years. You know, when they should really be hanging their heads in shame. Reporting that 3,986 persons have been killed over 10 years is a slick way to avoid reporting that the scourge of crime, especially violent crime, is now out of control, with murders expected at the end of 2024 to be more than any previous 5 years. The policy response of this government can be described as focused on more policing rather than more effective policing. Despite its claim, the minister said, the government has financed the police to the tune of $26 billion over the same 10-year period and will continue to provide all possible available financial resources to the police in the fight against crime. So they have taken the position, and I mean, I too will quote a rapper, Tupac, you know, they have money for war and none for the poor.
I know that one. You know that one?
Right? That's what they have money for. Because the statistics underscore the seriousness of this intractable problem. Further, in 2024, initiatives executed under the Ministry of National Security to combat crime and criminality focused on building capacity and strengthening the national security apparatus and institutions. These initiatives included instituting more proactive and effective policing methods, being committed to a greater sharing of resources, making improvements in technology, advancing equipment procurement, and dedication to more focused, intelligent-driven operations. So this, I think, is the minister. The steps taken are summarized as increasing the number of police officers, strengthening the criminal justice system, deploying more technology, and implementing a number of social programs. So, Mr. President, the government's list of its priority response areas also reveals its policing focus. Of the 7 priorities, 6 are related to policing: enhanced border control and protection, immigration, enhanced cybersecurity, expansion of the electronic monitoring program, and establishment of a national forensic DNA data bank, and expansion of rehabilitation programs within the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service aimed at reducing repeat offenders. Noticeably, the other area is administered by the Government of Trinidad and Tobago social programs aimed at reducing criminal gang violence. That was found on page 93 of the budget statement. And it went on to talk about the defense force. So, Mr. President, even when it is recognized that crime reduction requires more than police work, the minister is still wedded to a police-managed effort. If your return on investment is a higher murder rate year after year, then basic reasoning indicates you cannot keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. Mr. President, I urge the Minister of Finance, when you're in a hole, you have to stop digging. Because according to the Minister of Finance, the approach of the police to reducing crime will be multifaceted and driven by a commitment to both immediate and long-term solutions. It is a strategy grounded in the understanding that effective crime reduction requires more than just enforcement. It requires the active participation of every segment of society. Mr. President, therein lies the prescription for failure. An effective crime reduction strategy that brings all segments of society into the effort cannot be managed by the police. Instead, the efforts of the police and related organizations must be complemented by efforts undertaken by well-placed civic institutions dedicated to development generally, including both crime prevention and facilitation of an effective response to criminal activity. The best placed of such civic institutions are communities in which people live and with which they identify. All criminals come from some society, some community or the other. For the most part, the community watch them grow up in their households and watch them emerge to make deviant choices. It is at that level that criminals are well known, that the causes of crime are well understood.
Senator, you have 5 more minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. And most easily studied, and that crime prevention strategies can be best defined and implemented. Correspondingly, it is at that level that the social economic success of each individual and each household can be most effectively facilitated. So, Mr. President, whilst they are busy giving themselves an A grade, I say in this period of Diwali, we may have come on different ships, but right now we are in the same boat. And as Michelle Obama said recently, we need to do something. But we can't keep doing the same thing. We have to do something to mitigate against our little children being murdered in their beds. I mean, domestic violence is another major area. I'm seeing bullying now has taken center stage. Mr. President, 404 missing persons in Little Trinidad and Tobago. So all of this, as we say, based on the budget and its perspective on crime, is budgeting for failure. So out there, we are on the ground, Mr. President, and everywhere is the same pain, the same hurt, the same despair, the same fed-upness, the same disgust for this government of bankruptcy, bullying, blood, and brutality. Mr. President, it is now time that we turn the page. As I said before, the UNC will fix the foundations of our economy and build a new Trinidad and Tobago, more secure, more prosperous, more dynamic, and more fair. Unlike the PNM, our leader, the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar, always tells us in the UNC to put God in front and walk behind. Today, she stands steadfast, resolute, and resilient, like a rock, forging a pathway for equity, for all, prosperity for all, security for all. And with a focused vision and hard work together, we'll turn around Trinidad and Tobago to give our children the start in life they deserve by unlocking the potential on every single citizen. You know, I mean, with all that is going on in the newspaper, in my final thing up there now, you see, water is more than flour. Today we see the former Minister Jennifer Bissey speak openly in the media, quoting, and this action is unprecedented. You see, she's saying, she did express a view that it was unprecedented and undemocratic, and it undermines the democracy of the PNM. You see, right now, the people in the PNM now realize, just like Quavo, that Dr. Rowley doesn't walk it like he talk it. You understand? That is
Senator, remember the title. Title when you're using the names. Title. Prime Minister.
The Honourable Prime Minister doesn't walk it like he talks it. Right? Right? So now the chicken has come home to roost, Mr. President. I remember then opposition leader Patrick Manning had told the UNC, who was in government at the time, in Real Cross talk, one must wait until the evening to see how splendid the day has been. For the people of Charlottesville, we say, what you meet you and pass you. Mr. President, Trinidad and Tobago, don't worry about a thing, because every little thing is going to be all right. It has been a long time coming, but I know a change is going to come. And when that time comes, I urge the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to choose their prime ministers wisely.